the reason why we lift weights as an athlete is resistance. And that's the only way we get stronger is like lifting something with resistance. If everything's easy, we wouldn't be a better parent. We wouldn't be a better player. We wouldn't be a better person.
But I heard the clap.
Yep, we heard the clap. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Days Off pod by Dad Szn, where we are building a community of unstoppable dads.
Love that.
Today,
I love that.
Today is the Pat Show. All right? We are going to dive in to Pat O'Donnell, co-founder of Dad Szn's journey. I think there's a lot to learn here. It's an inspiring tale, ladies and gentlemen. So fasten your seatbelt. Nick, you want to kick things off, or how do you want to do this?
Why don't you start out? I mean, you know what? A little bit about Pat. Pat is, Pat and I go back to 2020. Knew of him before that, just being a longtime player for the Chicago Bears. We had played each other in a previous playoff game that we will not go into detail. I'm starting out hot with you, Pat. But no, right away in 2020 when I got to the Bears, Pat was one of the first people that I got to know, and just an amazing teammate. Became an amazing friend. I mean, we're doing a company together. We're doing Dad Szn together, so it shows how close we are. The thing that impressed me most about Pat was just how kind he is, how he relates to everyone, how everyone in the locker room loves him. He's such an instrumental part of like that Bears team and any team he's on. Like he cares so much about individuals, and just the way he relates to everybody, the energy he brings was just contagious. So. And then his wife Shelby is just a rock star, just awesome. PA girl, Harrisburg, shout out. They're just an amazing couple. They're some of our best friends in the world, and I can't say enough about this man right here. It's an honor and a privilege to get to work with him each and every day, and I'm so excited that this episode is going to shed light on, his journey of fatherhood, but also his journey of his career. The last year specifically has been quite a wild ride, and we'll get into that. But, John, I know you got a little question ready to roll. I just want to give a nice little introduction to the co-founder of Dad Szn, one of my best friends, Pat O'Donnell.
So, Pat.
What an introduction, boys. Thank you.
Come on, man. You deserve it. You are the man. And we're here on the No Days Off pod by Dad Szn, a brand that you started, that you were co-founders with Nick. And I think just launching into why you started that brand will be the perfect way to get into all the other parts of your story. So let's start there. What inspired you to start Dad Szn?
So we talked about this a little bit on the first episode of the No Days Off podcast. But to reiterate that real quick is I just wanted to create a community that just incorporated everybody, like to have that locker room feel that Nick was alluding to, like you meet really good friends and people that you really connect with. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this brand is to connect everybody, if it's different races, different experiences, left, right wing, anything. Like we're here for everybody. And I think that's what it's all about. And I think Dad Szn could just, take over in a positive light for dads, because I know sometimes the 9-to-5 dad gets a bad rap, like, oh, he doesn't like hustle home, or like he's in traffic and he only kisses the kid goodnight and that's all he has until the weekend. But I wanted to create this brand just to give a shout out to those hardworking dads that just really grind to provide and put everything on the table, like for their children. A lot of them, everyone says, oh, he's not involved or he's working all the time. But without them, like they wouldn't have the opportunities that they have to do the soccer or eat the good food or live in a great house. So I think like this brand is just trying to highlight, the good that dads are trying to do for their children.
Love it. No, I think that's it. I mean, you're trying to reach everyone, as we've built this thing, and, dads, moms, the mom season line and the kid line. And, we're going to have the generic line for anyone. We want to be an impactful brand. Through our journey, you and I have always had so many, we've lived across the country from each other. Unless we've been on the same team, but we constantly have been talking on the phone, even when we weren't teammates post Chicago. And I know more than most about your journey, of becoming a father, playing in the NFL, the trials, tribulations, and the mountaintop experiences. But, I think specifically, this last year, I want to get into it early. Like, it's been a journey, right? The question I have for you is, what are the lessons you learned over the last couple years that you will share with the 3 kiddos?
And walk us through what those years looked like for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar, like with my background, real quick. So I got drafted to the Chicago Bears in 2014, and I was the only punter drafted, which was a really mountaintop highlight for me. Like, it's what I wanted to do. I made the transition from soccer to football in high school. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried to play tight end. I tried to play defense. And I knew like I wasn't going to go anywhere for it. So I fell in love with kicking the ball. I was a place kicker in high school, and in college turned punter. And those mountaintop experiences, which you guys were talking about, is chasing your dream and having your dream like flourish. Like you put so much time and effort into it. I think it's like raising children. Is it finally you get to see the fruits of your labor and me making it to the NFL. And we're one of 32 punters, and I know Nick was alluding to it. Like there's no backups, so like if something happens, like you're either a streak free agent, and that's what I experienced last 2022 2023 is when I was really trying to find myself and try to find like, do I want to like keep pushing to play football? And the answer was yes. And I went through a lot of peaks and valleys and great moments and low moments where I was like, yeah, I got a lot of people reaching out to me like in free agency, and then like it kind of like died off. And then I had to go through some of the hard moments of going to these combines where usually you would have to go through this process when you're year one, year two, trying to make it. And it was a humbling experience for me where I was going every which way I could to make it. Like I just wanted to tap back in. And I think that was a low moment, but I learned a lot from myself and having these workouts in front of GMs and scouts. And I just wanted to have those moments that I can remember to encourage Palmer or Tate or my youngest son, Cole. It's not going to be pretty. You're going to have to work for everything that you get in this life. Yeah, I was drafted, but nobody cares about what you did. That's old news. And you got to keep working as hard as you can to keep reaching that goal.
And so what did that look like specifically? Because I know you shared the story with me when we were doing our little lifestyle shoot last time you were here. You were grinding.
Yeah.
You were heading to the field every day. You were practicing, and you were actually inspiring people in your community that you didn't even know about at that time, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the dads in my community, like they knew I played football, and they were like, oh yeah, it's great, man. You played 10 years. Like what's next? And I think I told them, I said, I'm going to keep playing. And I think they were like a little shocked by that. But like, why do you want to keep playing? Like, you got a beautiful family. Like, you live in Florida. Like, why would you want to move them? And I just felt like it wasn't time for me to stop. And if I can keep doing it and I'm healthy enough to do it, I wanted to continue to do it. But to your point, like your question, there was a dad in the neighborhood who's well-established lawyer in the area, and he's one of our neighbors. We got close with their family. He saw me in the summertime just putting balls like in the heat of summer in Florida. And he was like asking himself, like, why is he doing that? Like, if somebody calls, then you can get ready to go. But he didn't understand the grind that it took, to be ready. Like when somebody was going to pick up the phone call to see if you were in shape, like to see if you were actually ready to go. So he was taken back by that. He shared with me after I got back from San Francisco when they called me out there, you have to perform on the spot if you're ready to go. And they said, yes, we like what we see. And I basically got signed right then and there. And he shared with me right after the season when I got back home, he said, like, man, you were so inspiring to me. This year wasn't great for me, financially with my firm. And I didn't really know what else to do but to look at your story. I just know that if bad things happen to you in your career, you just got to keep pushing forward because there is going to be light, even though you don't see the light. You just got to believe that something good is going to come out of a negative.
No, that's so good, man.
It's beautiful.
I think too, just to shed light from my perspective. I mean, you just kept working. You kept working. I mean, as we were building Dad Season throughout this process, the fun part about this brand has been there's always been kids in the background on phones, or because they're around a lot, and now they're getting to the age where they're getting into school. Like our youngest, Bodie, will be in school next year, but like Lily and Duke are there, so like. But the thing that was so inspiring was, like you were saying, like you just kept grinding. You kept working. You kept putting in the work, like going out there, punting, holding, working out at burn boot camp, training, staying in shape. I mean, what listeners don't realize is, Pat had already punted in the league, 10 years? Up to this point, 9-10 years. And, he's a veteran punter, great career, in Chicago for 8, and then Green Bay for 1, and then obviously last year, half the year with the 49ers. But, like, he's going to these workouts where these punters are, like, very young and maybe haven't even been in the league yet. But he's just – I remember when Pat would call me and be like, man, I'm flying out to, like, San Diego to do a punting thing, and I don't know if it'll work. But, I mean, this guy just never stopped grinding. And then Shelby, y'all's relationship, she's right there with you, like, has your back, believes in you. And it's just been such an inspiration. Then it's also like you get picked up by the 49ers. And then, she has to stay in Florida because it's mid-season. And it's just working through that. But I think, you've been such an inspiration for your kids. That story is going to be awesome for, Palmer, Tate, and Cole. Just be like, you know what? It's not always going to go like you want it to. But you just have to keep moving forward. And then obviously be present with your family, be present with your loved ones. But you got to keep putting in the work. Because if you weren't putting in the work and that opportunity to go try out and work out for the 49ers happens, like, you're not going to be prepared for it. You're not going to have a good showing, and in turn, you're not going to get signed. But you stayed prepared. You stayed grinding through the doubt, maybe the fear, the trials, and you rose to the occasion because you were prepared. And that was a huge testament to you. And, we talked before this episode. I mean, we talk all the time. It's like, what's your aspirations going on, now? I mean, you just finished, punting your 11th season. You had a great, half of the year with the 49ers when you got picked up. And I know from talking to you, like, you still ready to roll. Like, you're in great shape. You're working hard. Your kids are running around, but you're ready to roll, huh?
I should hire you as my agent.
Hey, you know what?
I'm ready to sign you.
I'll always be your hype man. But I just want people to know, like, though you technically could stop playing, like you set a great foundation for your life. We're working on dad season, but, like, there's just something about playing sports and doing something when your heart says you want to keep doing it and you have that ability, you keep going because you have heart. You love, like, I know you, and like I mentioned it earlier, not only are you a great punter, a great holder, people forget, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit specifically, you're a great holder, but a teammate. People don't realize, like, the culture within a locker room is so important. You have to have guys that, like, bring that culture, that bring that atmosphere, and you've always been one of those guys. You were that guy in Chicago for a very long time. And a lot of that is, there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different egos in the locker room. You've always been a guy without an ego. You've always been a guy that's been a team player, but you've always been there for your teammates. And, conversations, talking in the locker room, talking at the, in the cafeteria, in between meetings, whatever it may be. You've always been that guy, and that adds so much to a team. So, like, when you and I were talking through this last year, I'm like, don't forget, like, not only can you execute punting, but people in a locker room, like, if they're building a team, they need high-character guys that care about playing and care about the locker room and the guys in it. You're one of those guys. So I just hope that there's, when you're a free agent in March, there's going to be a team out there to get you that's going to be really special, and you'll be there a long time. So I'm excited. I know you're putting in the work, and you're not only we working on dad season, I know you're out there working every single day to be the best athlete you can be. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I got something that I think I want to paint the picture a little bit, because I think this will be helpful for any dad out there that's just striving to be the best version of themselves to succeed in career. And it seems like it's impossible. It seems like I've got too much going on. I don't have the time, but you make the time for what matters the most, right? So at this phase, as you're trying to get re-signed, you have a newborn, you have a startup, and you're striving to maintain a healthy marriage, as always, which is a lot of work. And then you're trying to get re-signed. So were there any strategies that you implemented into your life to stay present, to stay mindful, to stay driven, to keep everybody happy and satisfied, as so daddy could go do what he needed to do?
Yeah, I think it's really important, though, is, like, seeing the perspective of things, because sometimes you lose it. And I had a great career, and I had great moments in my career and great people that I met. And every morning when I woke up, I would try to take like 5 to 10 minutes just to myself and just, like, be thankful. And sometimes it was very challenging, and I had moments where I was, like, not grateful in the morning. And I'm just being honest, and I was like, why is this happening to me? And I didn't know if I was ever going to come out of it. And I finally did. It's like, John's a big surfer. Like, when you get hit by the wave and you're, like, underneath the wave and you're like, is this it for me? Like, am I going to come up from this wave? Like, am I going to drown here? And some days I felt like I was drowning, but you just got to keep pushing. And I made time. Like I really did. Like I could have just been like, like if they call, they call, and I'll just swing my leg the day before they, want to work me out. But I found a lot of pride and like stress relief having the routine of staying in it. And if I didn't have the structure of the routine, like I think I would have fallen apart. And I think that's one of the big things. I don't know if Nick can talk about this too, is as an athlete, maybe as a businessman, like you're used to every hour of your day like occupied by a certain, you know, moment or a schedule or a meeting or, something that you got to be productive in. And just keeping that routine for me was super helpful because if not, I definitely would have fallen apart and I would not have gotten back into the league.
No, I think it's so true. I mean, having a great routine is, I think that'd be a great episode in itself is like, what is a routine? I know there's a lot of talk about productivity, how it would be efficient. I know I'm very interested in that. I also, we talk about like enjoying the moment,
Right.
grace.
Right.
We can optimize the day. We can be high functioning individuals, high functioning fathers, husbands, whatever it may be. But like you also have leeway, grace. But I think to be great, as you were talking about in your career, like it's the routine. I know when I was playing, I knew what I was going to do Monday. I knew what I was going to do every single day of the week, what I needed to get done, what film I needed to watch, what my lift was, what I was eating. The discipline allowed me to not venture off and like fall off the wagon with like nutrition and sleep and drink, too much alcohol, but that was from learning what that did to my body so I could be a high functioning individual on Sunday or Monday or Thursday or whenever you're playing. But now in this different season of life, fatherhood, it's different. Each day is a different entity. Each day is a different schedule. Being out of the league now over a year or two, whatever it is, I'm still aspiring to find that routine. And I know when you went back to play with the 49ers, as crazy as it is, you're away from your family, like, your routine. Like, it's put there for you. The hardest part is when you go home and your kids aren't there because you want to see those kids when you get home. You want to see your wife. And that's sort of where I want to pivot to is, like, Shelby. We have, I have Tori, Shelby, Danielle, Rod. We're going to find that special lady for Rod over there.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yes,
we can't do it.
yes,
We can't
sir.
do this without the ladies, right? So, like, I want you to talk a little bit about, marriage, the women in our lives. Like, Shelby's really held it down when you've done this. She's been your backbone. She's been your inspiration, the person that's never given up on you and always been pushing you and believing in you. Just talk a little bit about Shelby and like how much, like what that relationship's like in the household, like when you're there, like you talked about working out with her and all this, but like then when you go like sign with the 49ers, like that's a really interesting aspect that people don't realize is like your family for the most part is in Florida because that's where the community is because you can't, now if you were to sign in training camp or before the season, they're probably out in California because they can get situated. You can get the school system ready, the doctors ready, but like y'all all had that situated in Florida. So I say there. So like, how does that work? Like, tell us a little bit about Shelby and how she's done that for you.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say this quote where you see a strong man, but let me show you a strong woman that's in the shadows, that's elevating the man. And I feel like that's what she was doing this whole year for me when I was going through like, the valley and she kept me afloat. And those days where I was like, I don't know if I could, get out of this dark time. Like, and she was there for me just to encourage me. And I think that's really special to have somebody in your corner. And I know a lot of guys that are really successful, even in business, they have a strong presence at home that allow them to put in the extra hour where if they call at 5 o'clock and say like, hey, the job's not done yet. I need another hour. Like, you think you can handle it? Can you pick up the kids or can you drop them at soccer? So I think that's really important. Rod's going through it right now, trying to find that special lady. And if I could encourage him, like, you just got to find someone where if the moment is dark, like, is she going to be there to be the light? I think about that a lot where if something happened, if I got sick, like, is she going to be there for me? And I know she would be. So I think like if I can encourage anybody is just finding that person that will be there for you, because sometimes a lot of guys like in the locker room, the young guys are trying to chase the fastest thing, the prettiest thing, the girl that's out at every club or every girl that's like around all the cool people. Or I would just encourage them to actually find someone like you can vibe with and that's going to be there for you in dark times.
It's hard to even put into words how critical that is. It's literally everything. Man, Too may thoughts on that.
There's a lot of thoughts. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, it's the same thing. You want a great team. I always tell Tori, when you're raising kids and you're going through it, like there's times where we're sort of be at each other's throats a little bit, and we'll realize later in the night that it wasn't really like I did something, you would do something to me. It was just the chaos of like life. Like it's a beautiful, I say it's a beautiful chaos. Like chaos can be like a bad, like, oh, it's not. No, it's a beautiful chaos because you wouldn't have any other way. Like I wouldn't have any other way. Like kids running around, messing with the house, tantruming, boom. Like I know someday I'm going to miss this. I've talked to enough people that are empty nesters, their kids are raised where,
Yep.
and you'll hear it when you're in here, like, oh, I know, but you don't. They're so right though. Like we talked about, like the kids growing, like Lily's not playing dress up. Like I see that stuff. Like this, coming this week, like Lily is already talking about daddy-daughter dance on Friday. She's been talking about it for over a week, and she's like, Dad, what are you wearing? Like, is it gonna match my dress? And I'm like, you sound like just like your mom. I was like, I only have so many dress clothes because I like being comfortable. That's why I'm wearing a hoodie that I cut the sleeves on. But I love.
It's a good look.
But yeah, it's a good look. It's a comfortable look.
Might need to start selling those.
Hey, maybe, or you can just buy the hoodie and then you can just cut the sleeves yourself, like I do.
That's right.
But it's just it's truly special, and it's just enjoyable. And like the women in our life, Tori holds it down. It's just that partnership. And what I was getting to was saying, like, we might be bickering, but then at the end of the night, the key is we always come back to baseline. We laugh, and we finally get to a point where we're like, man, the kids got us again. They got us. And we find humor in that because we always want to be a great team. I remind Tori, and she reminds me, like, we're teammates in this. Like, though I love her, and to me, like, I'm just so attracted to her, everything about her, it's not always perfect. But we remind each other, like, we're teammates in this. It's not always going to be beautiful. Sometimes there's going to be turnovers. Sometimes you're going to make a mistake, but there's grace. And then you just keep moving forward. Tori always talks about, like, digestible bites. In life, like, take digestible bites, like one foot in front of the other. And that's what you do as parents. Like, it's not always going to be easy. There's going to be chaos, but just do the next right thing. Like, what is it? Anna or Elsa says, like, do the next right thing or something. I listen to that. I watched that movie a lot.
It's a great movie.
Years ago, I probably
Frozen.
Frozen. Shout out. I love it. I hope there's many more. I've enjoyed watching it with my kids. I was just watching Sonic 3 last night, and I'll tell you what, the kids did go downstairs though, and Tori came up and was like, "Are you serious? Are you just up here watching this by yourself while the kids came down and got a snack?" I'm like, "It's a great movie. I can't stop watching it." And she just laughed. She's like, "You are such a kid." But
they always put those little things in there for the adults, though, too.
Yeah, there's some adult humor that, like, when you go back to the old shows, and it's so good. But
I agree, though, man. It's the challenges can be so hard and so ridiculous that you have to laugh.
You have to.
You have to have the ability to take a step back with your partner, recognize the greater good, and laugh because it's challenging. But the beauty of challenges is that it reveals yourself to you.
Yeah.
Right? It gives you an opportunity to step up, to grow, and to become better. And if you can do that with somebody, like your wife, then or your business partner.
Yeah.
Because having a business partnership is a lot like a marriage. When somebody's down, you need the other person to step up and shoulder the load. And you know how long that might be for. It could be weeks. It could even be longer if you're really in a slump. But having a strong partner, there's no doubt that is such a huge advantage in life.
No doubt. And I don't know why I was just thinking about this, but I was thinking about Uncle Pat. Pat, I was talking about being a kid myself, but I'll tell you who the biggest kid in this whole thing is this guy on whatever we're doing software-wise here that get you here from Florida.
Patty the Batty.
Pat, the last 2 times you visited us in California, I'll tell you what, you have been amazing with the kids. You're so good with the kids. But, like, there's been one common denominator. It's like, for some reason, it's like when we have play swords at those times where I go to Ace Hardware with Duke, and he always wants to play swords, and eventually they break, and I have to throw them out. For some reason, the last 2 times, which there's a large separation of time between those times, those are the times we have the play swords. So Pat ends up walking into a house with play swords and Duke and Lily ready to roll. How much do you love that, Pat?
I just love the fact that they remembered me.
Oh, they remember Uncle Pat. They might have abused Uncle Pat this last time.
But you know, like kids that you're like, they didn't remember that. They remember everything. And I think that is so awesome that you didn't think, like, Shelby showed Palmer a picture of you the other day. She's like, Uncle Nick, or that's Uncle Nick's truck, the one you sold me. Like, they have, like, this memory. I'm like, how do you know that?
It's wild. They're just recording everything, just observing.
Everything. No, but I love the fact that we can build this brand and that I could go over to your house and fly across the country and fight swords or whatever, and then it's like no time is lost. And I think that's what's so great about like raising children and creating this brand together is like if you could look back a year ago, like when we started, like how far we've come, and you probably look back as a parent, like how far you've come as a parent. And you guys were talking about like adversity, and the reason why we lift weights as an athlete is resistance. And that's the only way we get stronger is like lifting something with resistance. If everything's easy, like we wouldn't be a better parent, we wouldn't be a better player, we wouldn't be a better person. And I just think like you have to embrace those horrible moments because we've all been there. And I just want to encourage everyone that you will come out of it. Like there are going to be some bad days, even sleep training. We're trying to sleep train our youngest. Like there are going to be bad days, but like you're going to come out of it. You're going to start sleeping better, and everyone else is going to get sleep. But I just want to encourage everyone that you will come out of a dark time.
And that's why grace is critical. Yeah. And it's not even just for yourself. It's for your partner as well because you're both growing through it. And you're going to fail. And we fail. And I fail every day. And that's part of it. But as we all know, failure is a mentor, right?
It is.
I hated that, though, as a younger person. I hated failing. I was so embarrassed. I thought it was a weakness.
Yeah.
Kids struggle. I mean, adults struggle with failure. I mean, we struggle with failure being athletes. I see it with kids, after every game, specifically I go back to like this last year with flag football. We had a really, really good team in the playoffs. Unfortunately, we lost we got a bye and we lost in that round, the first playoff game we had. And the girls were really, heartbroken because they all wanted to win the Super Bowl ring and whatever it was for flag football. But in that loss, that failure, they were listening, and I just got to share, like, this is what allows you to grow. Like, you just remember this feeling. Like, there's going to be another season. You'll get to play football again. Just remember, like, don't – because I know before the game all they were talking about was winning the championship, but they had to win 2 games to get there. And we forgot to play the first game. And, like, even as adults, we forget that. We look past where we should be, where our feet are. And that was my message. It was like, hey, y'all had such an amazing year. I'm so proud of y'all. Y'all did so good. We didn't get to where we wanted to today, but just remember, like, we have to win this game first. We have to run this play first, and then the byproduct of that is, like, maybe you win a championship down the road. But always remember that, like, do what you can in the moment to be the best person you can be, and then the byproduct of that is you're going to find a way to succeed, but it's through the failures that are going to teach you to succeed. And I know Pat and I've learned that in our careers, and it's a big part of it. And I think Pat too, we talk about parenthood, we talk about fatherhood, but like just switching the gears back to football a little bit, I want a little bit of people listening to the inside of like being a specialist, being a punter. What unique challenges do you face as a punter compared to other positions in the NFL, and how has your approach to the game evolved over your career? Just to, there might be someone out there that is, kicking, punting, or trying to figure it out and holding, like, and then you can give them some wisdom. So what wisdom you got for that?
Yeah, I think our position is very unique because we only have so many opportunities. I might punt one time a game, and I used to live and die by that punt. But to your point, you don't lose like you learn, and I think those are the moments where you become a better professional or where you become a better father. And I just want to encourage people, like, you are going to fail. I used to be afraid of failing, and I don't know where I heard it, but like, it's okay to fail. Like, you learn a lot through failure. And it seems like a loser mentality. It really does. But especially through like this last year, like, it's so, I don't know the right word. Like me getting like re-signed, it was like a breath of fresh air. Like I did it. You know what I mean? Like I overcame like the beast of getting cut and bouncing around in between, and then finally having some stability. Whatever stability is in the NFL, as you know, Nick. But I think, like, to your point, like younger athletes, like, you are going to have those moments of failure, and you just have to be able to attack it next week and just keep moving you forward. Because if you don't, and that's when you get stuck in the mud, and that's when you regress, and that's probably when bad things are going to start to happen.
But your perspective switched, right? Like, I know talking when you signed with the 49ers, and I waited till a couple weeks because I knew there'd be a lot of emotions. We were talking during that time, but, you had such a perspective switch through the, ups and downs of the previous seasons, and not knowing if you were going to get back in the NFL. But I remember you saying, like, you felt free. Like, you realized, like, you were very fortunate to be there, whereas before there was a lot of, there's a lot of pressure. Like when you're constantly in the league, you're drafted, you're playing, you're the punter. Like you never you're going through trials within the game, but then you're not outside the game trying to get back in the game. And then once you went through that year of that desert season of grinding, finding doubt, fear, all the things you were figuring out and going through on a day-to-day basis through your faith in Christ, through your relationship with Shelby, through being a father, all those things equipped you for when you signed with the 49ers. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to be the best I can be. I could tell just talking to you, there was less pressure on you. Though there's pressure, you were handling it in a different perspective because you're like, you know what? I've grown so much through this struggle that I just endured and conquered. And that's the beauty of conquering fears, it's not even a failure, conquering a trial, right? You have to endure a trial to grow, to then see later down the road what you learn from it, and then you implement that. And you did such a great job of that last year. Proud of you.
I don't know if you can, appreciate that. I don't know if you can attest to this too, but it was one of the best years of my life, just overcoming that. And I don't know if you've had moments where, I know you had that really bad injury and you overcame that. I know in the moment you're like, why is this happening to me? Like you ask God, why is this happening to me? And I know everyone does that on a daily basis. It's at different levels, right? And we're complaining about little things, about being a professional athlete and getting hurt or getting cut. And it's not life or death. And there are things that are more, insane than just playing the game of football. But I don't know if you want to touch that or we can go to another topic.
I mean, you're relating to everyone. I think
absolutely
we've all been there where you're like, why is this happening? I mean, that's the biggest question. Why is this happen? Why does this go on? And, you were talking about, faith and through my faith in Christ, being a Christian, spending time with the Lord. In the book of James, it talks about finding joy within trials. And that's really difficult. But through my faith and through surrendering my life to Christ, I've learned, the first thing that I think of is honestly when Tori and I suffered a miscarriage in Jacksonville. It wasn't even anything with my career. It was a journey through fatherhood. It was our second child. She was 15 weeks pregnant, and she had a bacterial infection. And she had. I'll never forget the moment. I'll never forget going through everything we went through. And that was detrimental. That was very difficult. But my faith gave me the strength to go through it with her and walk alongside her throughout that. And I remember leaving the hospital. I had to go get a change of clothes after a couple of days. And I'm in tears. I'm feeling everything. But the Lord gave me such a sense of peace, knowing that someday I'll see my son in heaven and that everything was going to be all right. But I was still going to have to endure the heartache. And what I didn't learn until several days through later was I had to speak to the media. I had to say why I missed practice because I just signed with Jacksonville. I had to share that what we had gone through as a family openly because I believe in being transparent and being impactful. And little did I know, 3 or 4 individuals privately came up to me and said, hey, we went through this as well. And they shared their journey of having a miscarriage that they hadn't shared with anyone else because I had openly shared our struggle. And I was able to be there and give them comfort through it all because we could relate through that trial. We could relate through that moment. I think that's what's so special is when you go through these trials, when you go through it, you feel alone. But you realize that's also a part of this podcast is talking through those journeys. You're talking about an NFL career. Those are real things. People are asking why. Well, God loves you, but he's also going to allow you to go through things in life to grow. And if you asked if everything was perfect in life, would you grow? It's you've become the person you've had through the trials and tribulations that you've overcome. And I know that, being a father, I have a lot of wisdom to give my children. I still have a lot to learn. That's why we also want to learn here. But I know with talking to them and going through the things, I can walk through life with them and walk them through the struggles, and I can let them fall. I have to let them fall. I have to let them go through things. But then when it's the right time, I'll be there to lift them up, and I'll be there to give them perspective. So I think everyone can relate to that, knowing that. And if you're going through it, just know that just do the next step, the next little thing, and just breathe. Harold Carmichael, who's a Hall of Fame receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, he caught footballs for me early in my career. Amazing man. I call him a grandpa, but he's just the man. My first day of practice for the Philadelphia Eagles in rookie camp, I was excited. I was nervous. And I remember he was catching balls and came up to me. He's like, just breathe. Just breathe. And he would text me that before every game. And I'd tell everyone out there, if you're going through it, just take a breath, close your eyes, and just breathe. Just take a breath, slow down the heart rate, and just keep going. So I think everyone can relate to that, Pat, and it's powerful, man.
Completely agree. There's this quote that I heard, and it's not literal, but it just made me think of it. And it's, hell is a place where the man you are meets the man you could have been. And that, so there's been quotes that have like literally guided me when I was young and I was like in my 20s. The one of the quote that like I lived through was, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. You know, I'm going to chase my dreams because I don't want to be upset. I don't want to have internal like anger, and I don't want that to spill out into the world. So my goal was to become a filmmaker, you know, and then, and every job for me and for Roddy was life or death at that time, you know, and, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is it that important? It might feel like you saying like, oh, life in the NFL is not that important, but it is, you know, because these are our passions and these are important. And if you're not failing, it means you're not going for it. And you got to go for it, right? Because you're going to fail, and that's going to reveal to you the man that you are to become, you know, so that you don't have to meet the man you could have been. You are that man, and you can stand proud at the end of the day, and you can teach your kids lessons from experience. You can teach others from experience. And to your point, it's so hard with children, right? Because you love them so much, you want to snowplow. Like, I have a hard time with Jack. I want to carve the way for him, you know, but you have to let them screw up. You have to let them fail and take a step back. Let them run and trip down those. I mean, not trip down the stairs, like literally, but still, like you're gonna scrape your knee, and you're gonna realize you probably shouldn't do that next time, you know. And then let that scale up and ladder up to something more important. But man, this first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's beautiful what this podcast can do. We can build this community, and we can share these stories for other people that are out there.
No, yeah.
And Pat, thanks for sharing your story, man. We're not done yet, though. You're not off the hot seat.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to like what you said in this, you know, when you talked about being unstoppable. Being unstoppable is overcoming fears and failures.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean you're like literally unstoppable and everything's perfect. Being unstoppable is realizing like you're going to get through it, and you're going to keep going. You're going to become powerful through that. And then you're going to be able to share that wisdom with others to help them through their trials. So I think we got one more great question for Mr. Pat O'Donnell.
Are you hearing I'm hearing a little bit of feedback.
A little bit of feedback. This is why we have editing and outtakes.
Boom.
Or we just let it roll, and y'all
let it ride.
or you just get to see the process of building a conversational, I guess, podcast, but I like to say conversation.
Conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
A recorded conversation.
That's on a podcast channel.
That's right.
Or YouTube if you're watching us. So.
Or on Instagram.
I see. I'm learning all the social media stuff. And Pat, how much have I grown with social media? Like, what do we say? Unhinged Nick when I go crazy with it. Like Nick's going unhinged. I'm like, you know what? I feel passionate about the Dad Szn brand. It's something that, you know, we want to be impactful in communities. So I go a little unhinged. It's a lot easier to go unhinged with the brand that you feel passionate about, that you want to be impactful, than just putting up a lot of clips of you throwing touchdowns and catching the Philly special. It's a lot of fun. Occasionally those clips do pop up though.
The best part about you, Nick, is that you dive head first. You really do.
Hey, I go for it,
Everyone
man.
has that friend. You really go for it.
So
I just respect the hell out of you.
So I got a funny
That's
story. Awesome. This is a little off cusp. So yeah, I used to be that way as a player too, until Andy Reid in Kansas City in 2016. I used to love throwing post routes. Still do. Don't really throw them other than flag football to the girls, and I'll coach my son eventually. But I threw this post route against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Kansas City, and is against like cover 3, which I've thrown cover 3 touchdowns. I've like made it a thing. You were used to be told never throw a post versus cover 3, and I'm like, I'm going to throw it over the safety's head, and our receiver's going to go get it. When you got guys like D-Jack and Macklin and all those guys I had, they can go make plays. So anyway, didn't realize it, but Macklin got hurt, shifted out. Another receiver came in. He fell down. I still threw the ball, and it was not picked off, but because the DBs and I think Ramsey and the safety ran into each other. So I go over to the sideline, and Andy Reid looks at me and goes, I mean, I'm just not going to be able to call any more posts. Every time I call a post route, you throw the dang ball. He's like, I'm just going to have to call a quick game because you're just throwing the ball deep every time. And from that moment on, I'm like, man, I got to like hone in a little bit. I can't be like diving in head first right here. I just got to like understand exactly what he's wanting here and make the smarter decision. But I'll tell you what, when you drop back, it's like a punt, man. When you hit that 70-yard punt or whatever a monster punt is, like it is so much fun just to let it rip. But what I learned for the rest of my career is there's times for that. Pick the right time to be aggressive, and the other times just, hey, digestible bites, little completions here, lull them to sleep, take the shot. But I do dive in heads first. That just made me think of that Andy Reid story, and I thought I'd share it.
I love it.
Sorry, I just went on. I totally went like a totally different direction.
That's what it's
like
all about,
Grandpa
folks.
Nick there for a minute.
What?
Tell you about the story, Andy Reid.
I'll tell you what, that's one of the most fun things about like football and the relationships. You get to hear so many stories, and you get to be a part of so many stories. So those are some of the favorite parts of being in the locker room, being in the sauna, being at practice, being in meetings is like there's always stories. And that just brings everyone together. And that's what we're doing right now. We're telling stories.
That's it. We got one last one for Pat?
Got one last one. I'm going to let you take the lead right here. Put the pressure on you.
All right, Pat. So we'll see where this one goes. But how has being a professional athlete influenced your approach to running Dad Season? And what lessons have football have you applied to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's pretty much like what we talked about earlier. It's like the failures and embracing that and finding the joy in the failures. It's like no one has a playbook, man. Like how to overcome an obstacle. No one writes you a playbook on how to build a business or a company or a brand. And I think that's like the best part about life. And sometimes I do want a playbook and I want to read it. And there are people out there that give you great advice, but sometimes you try to implement it and it doesn't work. I think that is so key. It's just like being okay with stumbling.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've stumbled a lot in this business. We've come across some great people, and I didn't know the first thing about running an apparel business. And I know, Nick, you didn't either. And we've met some pretty amazing people along the way to help us in creating, good hats, good quality. And I think that's what's number one, is creating
great quality,
something that people can be proud of and wear. Anyone can put on anything on a t-shirt, but if you don't like wearing a t-shirt, it doesn't feel good. It's like putting on a jersey. Sometimes you have the equipment manager tailor it, cut it a little bit, and then it feels just right. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this brand, is making Dad Season fit everybody. And we're not trying to say like this brand is just for professional athletes or, the people that have hyper successful people in this world. Like we're here for the 9-to-5 dad, the average Joe, the firefighter, the cop, the teacher that is just trying to, be the best dad they can be, like every single day. So.
No, I appreciate that, Pat. And it's so true. I mean, this is the part of building the community. This is the part that I've been most excited about. And you learn a lot doing something. I mean, this was something that, with the Dad Season, there's just something about it that, Dad brand, like it's not necessarily a cool thing, but it's becoming a cool thing. Like, how do you make it a cool thing? And I love storytelling. I love what's the reason behind it. Like, why are you doing why are you doing what you're doing? And like Pat said, like we've met some amazing people. Like the fact that, John, you and Roddy are on this team. Like we're rolling. We're going to figure this out. That's a part of it. It's uncomfortable. Right. Like we're not we have to do this? No, we wanted to do this.
Right.
And we want to be impactful and we want to share these tidbits. We want to stumble, learning distribution, learning where the manufacturer, learning how to do all these things we're learning. But from the beginning, when Pat and I started, we want to create a strong foundation. And anything you do, you have to do the strong foundation. You build off that foundation. So now we're at a point with the No Days Off by Dad Season podcast where we can start sharing that story. And also we're learning. We're learning a lot. There's grace. Like we're overcoming failures every single day. But then once you learn through them and you get through them, it's like, all right, I learned that. Like that's how we do it next time. And that's life, that's fatherhood, that's playing sports, that's working a job, that's going surfing, that's playing pickleball, that's fighting in a sport manner.
Fighting another man in a cage.
But no, Pat, I really appreciate it, man. We really want to do this episode to shed light on one of the co-founders of, Dad Season, the No Days Off podcast. And there's going to be a lot more to come. I know you're going to join us for a lot of the episodes and just really appreciate you. You've been an inspiration to me. I know you're grinding, working hard. Staying ready for whatever opportunity comes after March. And I am so excited for the ride because I'll be there with you. I'll be talking. I won't be in the locker room with you, but I can't wait to hear about that. And I know we're going to have a lot more fun conversations to come. So I appreciate it, dude.
I guess there's just one more question, though.
What's that?
Because, it wouldn't be a No Days Off pod by Dad Season if we didn't wrap this thing up with a little joke.
Okay.
So, Pat, I do have one more question for you. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
A blind fish.
He took the eye out of fish. I'm not going to lie, for a second, I thought you sneezed or something. But then I was like,
come on, boys.
Hey, all right. Ding, ding, ding. Well, hey, after all these episodes, we're going to see what was the dad joke of the year.
That's right.
So we got a couple now. Let's keep them rolling.
We're going to keep them rolling.
Appreciate
Pat, thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And thank all y'all for watching and listening. No Days Off by Dad Season. Out.